Hey there, rock stars! Welcome back to String and Story. My name is Holly Ann Knight, and it's my job to guide you to quilt and to live with confidence. And today, guys, we're going to talk about creative ideas for quilting borders. But first, I'm going to give you guys a hot second to get on here with me. Do say hi in the comments as you pop on so that I know that you're here and I can greet you. And welcome to my kitchen, by the way. It is rainy and gross. I don't know if y'all will be able to see this. I don't know how well y'all will be able to see, but it is nasty out there. And it's cold up in my sewing room. And I was very comfy right here. So I decided that we're just going to hang out as it is. So welcome to real life in my house. Let me get this pulled up so that I can see you guys. All right, perfect. Hey, Carol, I'm so glad you're here. So yeah, we're just going to do some real life here as we talk about borders. Honestly, life is very real in our house right now. So if you've seen my Instagram post and you have a little bit of an idea what I'm talking about, if you haven't, that'll be up on Facebook later today. But it's just real life over here. And my big confession to you guys today is that my Sojo is nowhere to be found. I don't have I wish I could put some sort of caveat around that, but I've done very little sewing for weeks now. And it's a combination of we traveled and the holidays happened and there were all these really, really good things. But in the midst of that, we are just kind of walking through. Hey, Happy New Year, Aurelia. We're also just walking through a really hard season with a friend of ours, and it's just been a lot of real life. And when I'm anxious, I don't sew. I feel like I've told you guys that before, but it's been a while since we had that conversation. So when I'm anxious, I cook. So hence the being in the kitchen. So I've been doing a lot more cooking than sewing, but it'll be back. I know it will. Just one of the lovely ladies on Instagram today made the perfect comment, and she said, we are all just walking each other home. So even as we're going to jump in and talk about quilting borders today, I bring that up, one, just because as a String and Story community, I always say that we do life together, and that's just where life is over here right now. But also if you are in a season like that where you're like, I miss my Sojo, I would like it to come back, where things are just going on, just know that you're not alone, and this is a place for you, okay? So you are in the right place. Exactly, Linda, grace over guilt. So I'm preaching that to myself. I'm encouraging you guys in that today. Lynn, Patsy, Debbie, Francie, Joe, Linda, Barbara, Dawn, Sue, Aurelia, Nicole, Lori, Mary, Karen. Oh my gosh, guys, I'm so glad you're all here. So anyway, that being said, hi, Moby, do you want to hop up? We might get kitties on the video today because I'm not in my sewing room. See, Sue, I wish I was like that. I cannot get full I cannot even walk in my sewing room right now. And I want to really badly. Come here, Moby. Stop just looking at me and get up here. All right, Moby says hi. I will. It's coming. It's coming soon. But yeah, right now I'm cooking. That's what I do when I have things going on is I cook. Many of you are geographically far from me, so I can say this and not not feel like I'm over promising, but I'm definitely, excuse me guys, I'm the person you want in a crisis because I cook in a crisis. I'm like, there's a crisis, food, people need food. No one's going hungry on my watch. So anyway, that's real life around here right now. So with that update, let me pop this slide deck up on the screen for you guys. Whoop. And we're going to talk about quilting borders because here's the thing. I may not be doing a whole lot of sewing right now, but I definitely have some borders that are going to be waiting for my attention. You might as well. And if you are I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me toggle over to Kate, my love. It's so good to see you. Kate, you're doing real life too. We're walking each other home. I love that phrase that one of the ladies gave me this morning. So welcome to Creative Ideas for Quilting Borders. Moby, that was very rude. It is not beyond me that the quilt I'm holding in this picture doesn't have a border, but I liked it. So there's that. In this mini workshop, we're going to discuss ideas for a couple of different ways to quilt borders. So this last step of your quilting process is a crowning jewel and not a rushed conclusion on your quilt. Because if you're anything like me, by the time you get to the border, you are deeper done. You have quilted all the rest of that puppy. You've pieced it, basted it. You've gone the distance, and you know you still have the binding coming. But even so, you're like, man, If I can just get this border quilted real quick, I can get this binding on, throw this puppy in the wash. It'll be soft and fluffy by morning, right? But you thought it was a quilted shirt, Kate. That would be amazing. Right, Sue, borders and binding. This is real life. But here's the thing. Taking the time to be thoughtful about the border can add some zing to the finished product. And Moby, guys, this is why I don't let the cats in my sewing room. This right here. Look at this rudeness. Moby, you are a turd. I love you, but come on. Can you lay down, please? Maybe? He's making biscuits on my leg, as if that solves my problem. The big old tail in my face. Get out. I know I brought you up here, but get out. Okay. So as with the rest of your quilt, making a quilting plan for your border before you get started will help you play through on your quilting for a gorgeous finished quilt. And I think also, and we'll talk about this some as we get into these next few slides. Nicole, yes and amen. Oh my gosh, Marie, I bet it is so cold. I bet it is so cold. But thinking through ahead of time, like the complexity of your quilting as a whole, and if you have done something really complex in the center of your quilt, can you make it a little simpler for the border so that border goes faster? Or do you really need to match the complexity? But making some of those decisions ahead of time and just making sure that you've thought through the whole headspace of what does it look like to play through. Now, I've indicated this already, but I'm going to say it point blank. I'm preaching to the choir on this one. This is something I struggle with. That's why I think it's worth having this conversation, because it's something I struggle with. What I found as I put these slides together is that I didn't actually have as many examples of different border designs as I would have liked to have had for you guys. So you're going to see that as we go through. So part of that I share because even as I was talking at the very beginning before we even got into our slides for today, this is real life, right? And like struggling with those borders and bindings, like that is real life. The other, I don't know if you guys are like this too, but I also struggle in just getting the border on the quilt, like for the top. That's another like speed bump for me. So you're not alone, but let's think through a couple of ways that we can make these borders beautiful and lovely as part of our finished quilts. Okay, so first is doing a single motif, right? This is where there's just one motif. It is staying within the border itself. So the pieced border, the kind of the designated border space. And you just simply zip your way around the quilt and then you're done, okay? So switchbacks is one of my favorite go-tos. It's got a great modern feel to it. You'll see in the caption of this video, I actually put 2 links for you guys. So the first link is over to the blog that I posted this morning that is essentially this slide deck in a blog form. So written out a little bit with some of these thoughts so that you can go through and kind of chew on it as you're making your quilting plans. But I also included a link to a blog about wavy borders. And if you have ever gotten your quilt all basted, you've gotten the center quilted, you're getting to the edge and you realize that your border is like super friendly and ripply and there's just a lot of extra fabric in there, switchbacks are your friend. And I've written a whole blog post about how to use switchbacks to strategically deal with the pleats and puckers that come from a friendly border, okay? Hey, Bev. Hey, Terry. Hey, Joyce. So switchbacks is a go-to one that I love. I love ribbon candy as well. It's a little bit less modern than switchbacks, but it is just as quick. These are both very quick designs that you can get on. Now, I know you can just barely see the ribbon candy, kind of the bottom edge of this quilt. That's the other thing is borders can be hard to photograph, I realized. Wet and windy. Oh my heavens. It's wet here. It's not windy here though. It was windy this weekend. That's why we lost. Guys, I'm so sad about social hour. We had no internet for like 24 hours, but we had power. So I guess I can only complain so much, you know? By the way, if you're wondering what I'm doing with my arms, Moby is in my lap down here and I'm rubbing on his head. And then of course there's the classic feather. So this is going to be more complex. But feathers go faster than you might realize. This is something we talk about in Free Motion Quilting Academy that, on which one, Shirley? The blue and yellow, the Operation Smiley, or this turquoise one? But with feathers, you can actually work in the round. So think if you're familiar with knitting, right? Like you can do passes back and forth, almost like if you were long arming. But then you also can knit things like socks or gloves in the round where you're actually just knitting in circles. You can work feathers the same way around your quilt of stitching the stem first and then doing all the little feathery bits all the way around down one side and then all the way down the other. And the only time you'll actually break thread with either of those, no, Moby, you may not touch my phone. The only time you'll ever actually break thread with either of those is if you run out of bobbin thread. So even feathers, like I put them in the single motif category here because they are just a single motif, but they also are still a lot simpler than they maybe look, right? So just as a thought on that. Now remember, these this first section here, these are going to be kind of your quickest options, and you can pick how modern or how traditional you want that border to look, just based on the rest of the quilt. And I tried to give you a spectrum here from like much more on the modern end with something like switchbacks, which that could also be straight lines if you wanted to work that with a walking foot or work it with a ruler, to ribbon candy all the way to feathers. And guys, the other thing that I want you to understand is like you really can put anything in a border, right? If you can choose not to treat your border separately, if you just know that you're working on a big quilt and you want to do a simple like overall quilting plan, don't treat that border separately, right? Do it all as one, so when you're done, you're done. And that's a decision that you can make as part of this process as well, okay? So yes, exactly. Feathers are way quicker than they look, right, Denise? That's one of the things I love about them. Now, we also can get funky. Felicia's now down here, so like the cat situation is about to escalate, just so you know. You also can have combinations of motifs. Now, for me, like I mentioned, a single motif border creates more of a frame around the quilt, whereas combining motifs can get all kinds of funky. And this might be something that you do if you've got kind of a funky quilt to start with. But this is if you feel like you either visually, oh, I'm so sorry, guys. I'm drinking coffee because I'm trying not to yawn because it's yucky and wet here, but clearly it's not working. But these combinations just introduce an element of funkiness, right? They can push interest all the way to the edge of the quilt. There's a push-pull there, though, of the funky element of them can make them more fun to quilt and thus make it easier to play through, but they also can take longer. So it can make it harder to actually get it done the way you want it done because they're more time consuming. So you've got that push-pull there. And a lot of this is simply going to be learning your style, right? And what fits best for you. So here I've got paisleys and pearls. I think you're probably going to struggle to see real well on the border. It's in that blue border. And paisleys and pearls are basically really big paisleys that have pebbles inside of them, okay? And I just was trying all the things when I did this quilt. But this is a fun one because you alternate the direction of the paisleys and it creates a different feel. It's less. The interesting thing about it is it's two very traditional motifs, the paisley and the pebble. By putting it together, you get a much more modern feel. So just a lot of fun. Oh, Nicole, thank you. Oh, there goes Moby. We knew he was going to move at some point. All right, feathers and switchbacks. So this is actually my favorite combination. And I've done it on two quilts somewhat recently. So this is, oh, I wish Kristen was here. It's linked on my blog. I think it's Snow Day by Kristen Esser. This was published in American Patchwork and Quilting. I really should have checked this before I got on camera, right? But what's fun about this is, again, we can get that tension of modern and traditional by doing half a feather and doing switchbacks on the other side. So in this example here, you'll see I actually did the feather on the inside. If you get a copy of the magazine that this is in or see pictures of it on Instagram, when this quilt is all held up, I quilted it as a window, right? So a couple of things to note with that. The first thing to note is that I did not obey the seam line of the border, right? We just did our Quilting Outside the Lines workshop at the end of December, and we talked a lot about at what point do we just disregard the lines made by the piecing, right? And that's something I did with this border, is that I had the stem of that feather, the wavy stem, cross over that seam line. And on the outside, I did the switchbacks, and on the inside, I did the feathers. Now, the reason I did this is because I was quilting this quilt as if you hold it up, it's a window. Now, you're going to be like, what? It doesn't look like a window. And I understand, like the piecing is not a window. Like the piecing is these big stars and hexagons. But the quilting that I did on it is a hoarfrost covered window. So you'll see all the snowflakes that I did in the center. And then there's big scallopy, swirled filled sections, then with the feathers coming in to kind of form that icy crust. And the switchbacks are essentially the window frame, right? So there's this like interesting image happening that honestly, I probably have to tell you that it's there for anyone to see, but it made for a really fun quilting experience. And it helped with that playing all the way through of quilting the border, because the border had a very specific purpose in this quilting plan, that it created the window around this kind of snowy, frosty center, right? Hey, Lydia. Hey, Winifred. Now, I did the same thing as far as doing feathers and switchbacks together on this quilt here, but I reversed them, right? So this is a very modern quilt that my friend Paige pieced and asked me to quilt for her. And I used all quite traditional quilting motifs on it, but created a very modern feel by, instead of doing a full feather all the way around, adding that layer of switchbacks. And again, switchbacks are just a fun way to add that little modern touch. It's not getting way modern, but it just brings it up just a little bit, okay? Other things that you want to, so basically things you want to think about when you're creating your border plan is how complex does it need to be for the visual aesthetics of the whole quilt? So for example, this quilt here, all of those snowflakes, I think I designed 7 or 8 snowflakes that I quilted in each of the kind of hexagon sections of this quilt. And it was very complex. And so I felt like the border also needed to be fairly complex. And that's why there's essentially those 3 layers to it, right? There's the scallops with the swirls, there's the half feather, and then there's the switchbacks, right? So for the overall feel of this quilt, my border needed to be fairly complex, right? So does it need to be complex? Can it be simple? If visually you can kind of go either way, then what will you carry out? Right? Don't overcommit yourself. Do not feel, even though they go fast and even though it's just a single motif, don't feel like you have to put feathers on every quilt that you do, right? Sometimes you may just want to be able to do a switchback and zip that thing around under your machine and be D for done, right? That's a decision that you get to make. And I want you, oh guys, I'm so sorry. Oh, this weather, guys, it's killing me. That's something that I want you guys to have I want you to feel the freedom of, right? So the aesthetics of the quilt, what will you play through? And then do you want to get really funky with it? Do you want to just use one motif? Do you want to use 2? Do you want to obey the seam line? So on this quilt here, using the feather and the switchbacks together, I did choose to obey the seam lines. But it would have been very interesting not to, right? And had this border, I'm pointing at my screen like that's going to help you guys, but to have the border bleed over that seam off of the white a little bit could have been a really fun thing to do, right? Yes, I love the feathers and switchbacks too, Lydia. It's something I'm like getting quite into because I love a good feather border, but often the quilts that I'm making aren't necessarily traditional enough to warrant a full feather. You know what? It's a good halfway point. Okay, so I blazed through that. I love just clicking through these slides and talking through some things with you guys. But do you have questions? Now, you can't see the second part of that text. It says, if you're still unsure, drop questions in the comments. So if you have questions about quilting borders, this is an excellent opportunity. Also think through, if you have sashing, the relationship between your border and sashing. There's always lots of things to consider. But the biggest thing is to decide, what will you do, and to make that decision about the border when you're doing the rest of your quilting plan. I think I often find that my biggest trip up is if I make my quilting plan for the body of the quilt and I go, oh, I'll decide the border when I get there. And then I get there and I don't know what I want to do. Okay. And then it slows the whole process down, right? So taking the time to make some decisions ahead of time. I say this over and over and over again, guys. Making that quilting plan is everything to your experience of quilting your own quilts. It takes so much pressure off. It makes it so much easier to start and enjoy the process because you've already made the decisions, right? Okay. So with that, the bottom line is that borders don't have to be boring. They can add a lot of pizzazz to your quilt. They can be a fun place to play, but they also don't have to be super time consuming. and you're allowed to figure out what is your perfect balance between those two things. Now, if you saw some of these motifs and you're wanting to learn how to quilt them, I would love to invite you to Free Motion Quilting Academy. Regular registration for the spring 2020 cohort of Free Motion Quilting Academy opens on February 1st, and I am very excited about that. Guys, you know, in light of everything I was sharing with you at the beginning of these videos, that there's just a lot of life going on over here. I do want to make sure you guys understand how incredibly excited I am about Free Motion Quilting Academy. This is my favorite thing that I get to do, is guide you guys from being a nervous or anxious or uncertain beginner free motion quilter to a confident intermediate quilter over the course of our time together inside this class. So if you're interested in learning more about the class and you haven't gotten information yet, I do have a freebie for you guys called My Top 3 Tips for Successful Free Motion Quilting, and you'll get that sent to you when you sign up for the waiting list. So if you go to stringandstory.com/FMQ Academy, you can go ahead and put your name on the waiting list, and you'll be among the first to know when things open back up on February 1st. And the registration at the beginning of February, I think it's going to be February 1st through 8th. So you'll have 1 week to register, and then class starts like a week later. We start mid-February. I won't be running this class again until the fall. So this is your opportunity to get in, and I'm pumped. I'm pumped about it. So yes. All right. Any questions or thoughts or anything, guys? Oh, Rhoda, I basically was just sharing about how I have not been doing a lot of sewing because we've just had a lot of real life going on. And when like real life strikes, I cook instead of sew. So I've been doing a lot of cooking instead of sewing. But my Sojo will be back soon. I feel it coming. I'm getting antsy for it. So that's a good sign. I think it'll also help when I finish wrapping up the 2019 business financials. Confessions of an Entrepreneur. Definitely up to my eyeballs with that right now. All right. You're cleaning up last night. Oh, man. Yes. I so understand that whole having to clean up before you can. Yes. I was actually doing dishes right before we jumped on together, which, see how pretty and clean my sink is over there? This is real life right here, guys, and I'm bragging about my clean sink on live video. It was an accomplishment. I'm just saying. All right, guys, thank you so much for joining me. If you don't have a border on your next quilt, lucky you. I find myself not doing borders a lot because I find them to be a roadblock, but hopefully if you do have a border, or if you enjoy the look of borders but struggling to know how to quilt them, this gives you a little bit of inspiration. As I continue to strengthen my border quilting muscles, which, as I shared with you guys at the beginning, is definitely something I need to continue working on. We'll continue fleshing this out together and having this conversation. So, Lydia, congratulations on your new niece or nephew. I don't remember which. I feel like you told me, but I don't remember. Thank you so much for joining me today, guys. Good luck with your borders. And fingers crossed for no major weather events so that we can have our social hour on Saturday. All right, my dears, have a great day. Make sure you click through the links to go visit the blog. And yes, Susan, you are live, but I'm wrapping up, my dear. So the replay will be up in just a hot second. Have a wonderful, I can't talk. Hang on, we're going to try again. Have a wonderful Tuesday, everybody, and I will see you soon.